weeks to go, let the games begin. It's a fantasy league. Gonna make some noise within. Got my team assembled, ready to take the crown. I'll dominate this league, tear it down to the ground. I've got my strikers up top, ready to score the goals. Midfield maestro in the show, control the flow. Defensive wall standing tall, won't let them through. Goalkeeper with the gloves, gonna save me too. 38 weeks to go, gonna rule this game. I'm the boss, yeah, I'll take fame with my fantasy team. Gonna rise to the top, no one can stop me. Gonna make them drop.
Hello everybody and welcome to 38 Weeks to Go. A really big hello to Haaland triple captainers. Hello to Haaland captainers. Hello if you own Haaland, and hi everybody else. I hope you are still playing fantasy football. I am your host Nash. Gameweek 2 is done and we have 36 weeks left to go. So let's get into it. Game week 2. How was that for you? As you can tell, this game week is pretty much divided into those who had Haaland and then those who did not have Haaland. And then a slightly small division between those who triple captained Haaland and those who just captained him. If you didn't have Haaland, I know how you did. I for one had Haaland, and I am basking in the glory of great decision making, or is it just luck? Or is it the fact that Haaland had scored 100 goals in 91 games by the time this match had played? I got 90 points. I really wish now that I had triple captained Haaland, but I don't know, I believe in triple captaining for double weekends, double game weeks. So starting at the back, I had Raya, who, if you saw his game, he was incredible. 10 points. Vardiol, they consider that goal, that wasn't nice. And then one of my 4.0 defenders really came in for me clutch. Faiz from Leicester, he scored a goal, 7. Ben White kept that clean sheet somehow against Aston Villa, got 6. Fernandes did nothing for me, he got 2. Gordon had 10. Bernardo Silva had 2. Luis Diaz had 14. Haaland, as my captain, had 34 points. Isak had 2 and Wood had 1. Last time out, it was a midfield that carried my team. No, actually it was my strikers who carried my team. And this week, it's still my strikers, but it's really Haaland who carried my team. And I was really happy because I stuck with Luis Diaz, and I really wanted to remove him after last week, but he gave me 14. So I compensated for Salah's points there. Unfortunately for City, you do not compensate for his points. You either have him or you lose. Last week I talked about trying to see if your strategy will work, and I'm feeling just a little bit vindicated about my choice in team. I removed Kulusevski. I just didn't realize that he was going to be the one who would benefit from Solanke's injury. So in one sense I jumped the gun. I bought in Bernardo Silva, so that was an L, although I didn't lose any points, but it was still an L. Unlike last week, there were only 5 clean sheets. Looking at the fixtures, you could say the marquee game of the weekend was either Brighton Man U. No, it can't be Brighton Man U. I was just joking. Well, it was really Aston Villa versus Arsenal, because that game really shifted the title race last time out. Arsenal 2, Villa 0. If you're an Arsenal fan, this was the best game for you because, first of all, you won, and if you had any lingering doubts about Ramsdale versus Raya, that has been settled. In fact, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if you find Ramsdale is gone now, because that position of his is gone. It's not a competition anymore. It's Raya's. Now, Arsenal were a bit fortunate that Watkins was asleep, or maybe off, or maybe just needs a bit of a break from the Euros and stuff, because he wasn't sharp, because he should have had 1 goal, definitely for sure. For sure, he should have scored that. I mean, if he scored the goal that he did in against somebody in the Euros, he has no business missing the goal that he missed. The second one, you could just say that's Raya, great reflexes, and that one's fine. But the one he missed, Trossard came on and scored probably with his first kick of the game, and then Partey scored a really good shot. Saka had an assist in this game. Raya had 3 bonus points, Partey had 3 bonus points, Gabriel and Trossard each had 1. The defense for Arsenal was quite impressive. I was advising people to maybe hedge a little bit. I don't know what you guys decided to do. I didn't have anything on my bench, so it was just my starting lineup or bust. So thankfully it worked in my favor. Once they scored at around the 67th minute, the game sort of switched to Arsenal and they were now the dominant side for the rest of the game. But before that, it was more of a balanced game, but after the goal, it just went. The highest scoring game of the weekend was Chelsea 6, Wolves 2. Before this game, Wolves had had an impressive record against Chelsea. But in this game, we saw Chelsea's team just sort of click. Chelsea cannot defend, but attacking? Why? The biggest thing of note in this game is that Nkunku didn't play. It's going to be very tricky because Maresca, in theory, has even better wing options than Manchester City has. And I'm wondering how this rotation is going to work. Because you have Madueke, you have Mr. Felix, who scored as well, you have Pedro Neto, you have Palmer, who's now being pushed towards the centre, you have Dewsbury Hall, who has really yet to be put in any shape or form in the team. It's quite interesting. I saw the Chelsea game versus Servette in the Europa qualification matches, and Madueke scored a really good goal, and I thought, maybe he might start. Maybe he's using Europa as a way to figure out his starting lineup. And he gambled, and Madueke has rewarded him with a hat trick. So now, I'm here thinking, I need to bring Madueke into my team, because maybe now Nkunku will be coming off the bench. In theory, Nkunku is a better player, more accomplished player, but on the pitch, the results are showing different. So I'm going to try and jump on this early before his price rises. It has already risen from 6.4 to 6.5, and I'm going to get it before it goes higher, and then just hold on and see. And this is only because Palmer is expensive. So it's one of those things. Of course, if you have Palmer, you're very happy with his returns. I'm just sure you're regretting not having had him as captain, especially if you have Palmer and you don't have Haaland. So the most important thing in this match is that Madueke and Palmer seem to have a really good partnership. And I honestly wouldn't even blame some of you if you went for a Madueke-Palmer midfield combination, just like how people had Saka-Odegaard last season. Side note, for those of you who still have Odegaard, you're strong. Palmer had a really good chip, maybe my goal of the weekend. Madueke's hat-trick was very similar goals. From the wing, cuts in, shoot. João Felix, his goal was really good. Actually, most of the goals that Chelsea scored were really good team goals. If you watch their build-up, you can really see the difference between what Maresca is doing and what Pochettino did. They sort of suck you in, quick passes, somebody's free, and then they just counter. Or they beat just somebody in the midfield, and then you just run through, and then you just keep going. So, okay, Madueke had 3 goals, Nicholas Jackson had 1, Palmer had a goal, João Felix had a goal. The assists, Palmer had 3 assists, Nicholas Jackson had 1, Pedro Neto had 1. This game could have been more if somebody like Malo Gusto could actually pass the ball. On the Wolves side, they lost Kilman, and I am beginning to worry about their defense. It doesn't seem like they can defend, but they can also score. I would suggest moving forward, if you're looking into Wolves, Strand Larsen, Cunha, and Ait Nouri are your best bets. And then also something random. Mosquera is such a random player. He's just a bit off, if you ask me. Last week, he was grabbing Gabriel Jesus's butt. This week, he injured Caicedo. So, what will he do next week? Stick and find out. It's not long before he'll be sent off. I'm very sure of that. If he's the man they got to replace Kilman, then they're going down. I'll even adjust it from Everton, because he is unpredictable and erratic. Ipswich 1, Manchester City 4. Should I just say, Haaland, Haaland, ha 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 ha, Haaland? I won't lie, when I looked at the score and I saw 1-0 Ipswich, I was like, no, this is not going to be a repeat of Manchester City versus Norwich, where they lost that game to Pukki. Thankfully, it wasn't. I had told you guys, Ipswich are playing a football that is unsustainable at this level, because the opposition that they're playing is of a much higher quality. They're pretty much a copy and paste example of Burnley from last year. He needs to adjust faster than Company did. They were just forced into mistakes, simply because they were just not good enough. And the people they played were just much better. And any team that will press them at the back will get this joy as well. Smodic scored for them. It was a really good through ball for him. A really good finish. It really went in slowly. The one that you think you can get, but you can't get, so you chase it, and then you look foolish. And then Haaland scored. De Bruyne capitalized on a mistake. Haaland scored off another mistake, and Haaland scored again. And it was done. This game was done by halftime. It was 3-1. And after that, they just played out the rest of the game, just to be sportsmen. I really wanted them to go for like 6 or 7, but, well, they had chances, to be fair. They just didn't put them away. Haaland had 3 bonus points, as expected. De Bruyne had 2, and Savio had 1. Savio's really good. He really made the person foul him in the box. I can see what Girona are going to miss from him. Also, Girona are going to do nothing in the Champions League this season. Savio had 2 assists, and De Bruyne had 1. The third highest scoring game, and the last one I'll touch on, is Tottenham 4, Everton 0. Everton are continuing to look like relegation favourites. They just seem so poor. They lack confidence. I don't know what's going to happen to them. It's going to be them and Wolves fighting for that 3 or 4. You know, that 17, 18. That's them as it stands right now. Because below them will be Southampton and what's the other one? Ipswich. Like I said earlier, Solanke did not play, which meant Kulusevski started. And it also meant Son played up top. Son scored 2 goals. Bissoumas opened the scoring with a good goal. Romero, you know when Romero scores, he gets so many points. It's ridiculous. They kept a clean sheet. I think he ended with 14 points. Romero is so annoying when you don't have him. When I have him, he gets me 1. When I have him, Tottenham can't keep a clean sheet. It's very frustrating. And also, there was a really good goal. The one Van de Ven took the ball from his box and really ran and gave the assist. Kulusevski had an assist. Maddison had chances. If you're somebody who loves Maddison and you had him in your team, you'd be very frustrated with how he performed. It was a carbon copy performance of Bruno Fernandes in Gameweek 1. At least Maddison ended up with an assist. Son finished with 3, Romero 2, Bissouma 1. The real question now is Son continues performing like this, playing from the centre, what happens to Solanke? In terms of disappointments, you could say Brighton beating Man U was unexpected, although, like we discussed last week, the history showed that Brighton beat Manchester United. So it wasn't much of a disappointment, but just from a historical perspective, Man U fans must be disappointed. Newcastle didn't lose or beat Bournemouth, so I guess that could also be considered as a disappointment. Let's look at the performers of the weekend. In goal, the top performer was Raya. He had 10. He was incredible. He deserved everything. If they could have given 5 bonus points, they would have. He kept that clean sheet. Him and Saliba were vital. Number 2 was a tie between Alisson from Liverpool, Sells from Forest, Vicario from Tottenham, and Areola from Fulham. They all had 6. When it comes to defenders, the top performing defender was Romero, like we just discussed. He had 14 points. Kilman, formerly of Wolves, had 12. Aina and Van de Ven had 9. Mavropanos from West Ham had 8. And then you had a bunch of guys with 7. Robinson, Faiz, Konate, Virgil van Dijk, Murillo. They all had 7. When it comes to midfield, I'm just going to read everybody who got above 8. Of course, you know, Madueke was the top performing midfielder. He had 20 points. Palmer followed him with 17. Son had 16. Luis Diaz, 14. De Bruyne, 12. Partey, 11. Smith Rowe, Salah, Gordon, and Gibbs White each had 10. Tavernier, Savio, Bissouma had 9. Iwobi, Bowen, and Souček each had 8. When it comes to forwards, Haaland, of course, had 17. Nicholas Jackson had 10. Welbeck had 9. João Pedro had 8. Cunha and Strand Larsen had 6 each. For those of you counting, Haaland and Welbeck have both scored for 2 weeks in a row now. Let's look at some stats. The most captained player this week, of course, was Haaland. The most vice-captained was Isak. The most selected player in the game week was Isak. There were 217,000 wildcards played, 118,000 bench boosts played, 102,000 free hits played, and 612 triple captains played. So let's talk a little bit about Haaland. We can't talk about this game week without talking about Haaland. Last week we said he had scored 91 goals in 100 games. So now, of course, he has scored 101 goals. He has played 101 games and scored 94 goals. Why you don't have him, I don't have an answer for you. Also, random facts. Haaland scores his most goals in August. Up to date, he has scored 13 goals in August since he joined Manchester City. It tends to be his most prolific month. He has scored 13 goals in 9 games. In 101 Manchester City appearances, Haaland has scored 10 hat-tricks. 7 of those are in the Premier League. This means he has overtaken Luis Suarez, who had 6 hat-tricks. Now he is level with Wayne Rooney. Haaland is now 1 behind Harry Kane, Henry, and Michael Owen, who had 8. The record holder for this is no other than Sergio Kun Aguero, who has 12 hat-tricks, which is the most in the Premier League history. And he's only 5 away from that. Will he catch it? Maybe by the end of the season. Who knows? Say what you will about him, but this man knows how to put the ball in the back of the net. Just to put this into context, at 24 years old, the only people who you can compare him to are Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. By 24 years old, Lionel Messi had played 326 games and had scored 197 goals. Cristiano Ronaldo, by 24, had played 362 games and had scored 132 goals. Erling Haaland, by 24, had played 315 games and scored 260 goals. So, if his body holds up and he remains consistent, this guy could end up with that Romario 1,000 goals thing. Haaland was triple captained by 477,000 people this game week for a glorious 51 points. This number was a record. This 477,000 is a record for people who triple captained him, because this is the most someone has ever been triple captained for a single game week. Haaland has an excellent record against promoted sides. In 8 starts against promoted teams, he has averaged 10.25 points per match, which means he has 5 double-figure hauls in these fixtures. In case you're wondering who the most triple captain players are of all time, number 1 is Haaland. Last season, he was triple captained by 1.3 million people, but he didn't deliver. He got 10 points. So times that, it says 30. Number 2 is in 21-22 season, Mr. Salah. He had 28 points, so that was a great triple captain. And he played Norwich and Leeds, so you can imagine the returns. Number 3 is in the 22-23 season, and it is Haaland again, 717,000. Salah was 1 million. He returned 16 points. Number 4 is Rashford in the 22-23 season, when he had a really good run. He played Crystal Palace and Leeds. He returned 20 points. And number 5 is Haaland again, with 477,386. That's this week that has just passed. And the main difference between this and the others is that all those were double game weeks. This is just 1. Madueke scored a hat-trick in 14 minutes. But where does that stand in Premier League history? Well, it is the 12th fastest hat-trick in Premier League history. The fastest? Sadio Mane in 2014-2015 when he scored a hat-trick in 2 minutes and 56 seconds for Southampton against Aston Villa. Number 2, Ruby Fowler, 4 minutes 33, Liverpool against Arsenal. Number 3, Jermaine Defoe, 7 minutes when he scored against Wigan when they won 9-1. Oh, Jermaine Defoe in that period was so frustrating as a fantasy asset. 7 minutes and 10 seconds, Gabi Agbonlahor when Aston Villa beat Man City 4-2 in 08-09. Ian Wright, 9 minutes, 4-1 against Ipswich. Andy Carroll, 9 minutes 50 in a 3-3 tie against Arsenal in the 15-16 season. Now, to balance great news, let's go to the other end. Brereton Diaz. This is his 15th game in a row that he has been in a losing side in the Premier League, starting from last season when he came on loan to Sheffield. This weekend was the first time Wolves fielded a squad without an Englishman. Liverpool have had their stadium renovated, and this weekend saw their highest attendance ever, with 60,107 people in attendance. No former player has scored more goals against Man U as much as Danny Welbeck. So, when Brighton play Man U again, just put him, or if he goes anywhere, just put him, he will score. As people are looking forward to the next week, Emil Smith-Rowe is the top transfer in this week, with 434,000 transfers. Of course, you can imagine Madueke would be up there. He is number 2 with 429,000. Number 3 is Danny Welbeck with 368,000. Wow. Haaland is number 4 with 346,000. And Palmer is number 5 with 321,000. So you're wondering now, who are the top people going out? It is Solanke. He's injured. 371,000. Isak, 368,000. Foden, 345,000. Nkunku, 333,000. Eze, 326,000. He was unlucky once again. The average of the game week this week was 69 points. So if he got above 69 points, well done. The highest points this week was 154 points. In our group, in the top 10, only one person did not have Haaland as a captain. 6 people triple captained him. In our group in general, 76% of us captained Haaland, 20% of us captained Salah, 2% of us captained Palmer, and another 2 captained De Bruyne. Those were the most popular captains in our group. Triple captain was used by 28% of us. 6% of us used our wild card, and 2% used both the free hit and the bench boost. Looking at our table, we have a new person at the top, Arnold Midunga. In our last podcast, I spoke about trying not to overreact to Gameweek 1. Further proof of that is, in our new top 10, only 2 people from last week are still in the top 10. And those 2 people are Hakuna Matata, who's number 2, and Kojo Danso, the ones who are number 8. Number 8, he was number 2 last week. He's gone down. You have to take it 1 week at a time. Just keep trying to improve. And if you're making the right moves, the changes will come. Now, I posted a riddle on our Instagram page. Our real top performer got 112 points this week. This manager has played for 2 weeks, Game Week 1 and Game Week 2, but has a total of 98 points. Isn't that just wild? Let me say that again. This manager has 112 points, but over the 2 game weeks, the total is 98 points. How is this possible? Now, we're many people, so I know it's not as easy to find such random things in our group, but I'll give you the answer. The answer is, he made 19 transfers. 19. 1-9. That cost him 72 points. Guys, If you're going to lose 72 points, just use your wild card. At that point, I think after you get to maybe, I think 16, even 16 is painful, but once you pass really 16, just use your wild card. There's nothing you're doing. Just use your wild card. 72 points is too much. This week sees our first time for our players to get over 100 points. We had 8 players getting over 100 points. Now, I'm going to discard this guy who got 112. He would have been the highest, but when you lose 79 points, you can't really say you've gained anything. So, Team Hatari, managed by Nabil Assad, was our highest. He had 107 points. And he had triple captain Haaland. Number 2, who was quite impressive, was Suleiman FC, managed by Sadiq Suleiman. He had 104. Big man Bossi, Arnold Midunga, was number 3. He had 103 points. Triple captain Haaland as well. Number 4, who I guess is a tie with number 3, is Franklin Asiema, manager of the Truth. He got 103 points. And number 5 was Tosh FC, managed by James Victor. He got 101 points. So, number 1, Nabil Assad, triple captain Haaland, which gave him a mighty 51 points. His second striker was Joao Pedro, who scored the winner against Manu. He had 8 points. His third striker was Isak, who finished with 2 points. In midfield, he had Gordon, who gave him 10 points. Then he had Diego Jota, who gave him 6 points. Saka gave him 6 points. Emil Smith-Rowe gave him 10 points. Vardiol gave him 2. Saliba and Trent gave him 6 points apiece. In goalkeeping, none of his keepers played. He has Dubravka and Tana, and none of them played. That's how he got 107. Mr. Manager of Suleiman FC had 104 points. I believe his team was really impressive. Mainly because he had no triple captain and he still ended up with 104. He had Haaland as captain, 34 points. He had Welbeck, who gave him 9 points. He had Isak, who gave him 2 points. He had Palmer, who gave him 17 points. Son, who gave him 16 points. Nkunku, who gave him 1. In defense, he had Pedro Porro, who gave him 6. Saliba, who gave him 6. Konsa, who gave him 1. Harwood Bellis, who gave him 2. And Raya, who gave him 10, for 104 points. Like I said earlier, global number 1 had 154 points. He had triple captain Haaland for 51 points. Then Welbeck, who had 9. Just that, they had 60. It's more than some of our people. Then you have Emil Smith-Rowe with 10. Salah with 10. Madueke with 20. Wow. Then you had Bowen, who had 8. And Son, who had 16. Interesting. Haaland, Salah, Son. I guess anything is possible. In defense, he has Mazrui, who had 4. Robertson, who had 6. Romero, 14. And Vicario, who had 6. So for a strong midfield, he's given up Arsenal defenders. Interesting. While it is still early days in the league, you can't take the table seriously. Like, for example, Brighton are top of the league right now. You can't take them as the contenders. And our league isn't too different. Right now, we don't know who will be fighting for the title and for the 20k. But right now, Arnold Midunga, manager of FC Bigman Bossi, is number 1 with 176 points. He is tied with Anthony Koila, who has 176 points as well, manager of Hakuna Matata. Number 3 is the points leader, Nabil Assad, manager of Hatari, 173, who is tied with Alan Muchangi, who has 173 points as well. Number 5 is another two-way tie between Pit Stank FC and Playboy Fatty. Number 7 is Franklin Asiema, manager of The Truth. They have 167 points. At number 8, we have Kojo Danso, manager of The Ones, 166 points. Number 9 is TK, manager of Sui, who has 166 points. And number 10, we have 164, and that is Bode Blachowicz. I'm sure I've said that wrongly, and I am sorry. So, on the other end of the table, I was just trying to look at who got the lowest points. And one of the contenders was M Culture FC. They used their free hit this weekend, and they got 40 points. Imagine using your 40 hit and getting 40 points. Captain Isak, who gave him 2. And the highest performer was Virgil van Dijk, who gave him 7. Yep, and that all tied up to 40. No Salah, no Haaland, nothing. Just a tough one. That's a tough one. So I was just looking at a team called Golden Bug. And this team is bad. I'm not sure if this person is genuinely trying. Because in a team with Saka and Salah and Raya, he captains Bruno Fernandes, puts Raya on the bench. I think this person is a Man U fan. It's very weird. 30 points. 30 points. That is our lowest performer this week for sure. As we look forward to the next week, there's really one main issue now. Do you bring in Haaland or not? A lot of us, not me, but a lot of you guys, a lot of you guys are starting to feel the pressure of Haaland and whether you did the right thing. Now the question is, how long will you take before you bring back Haaland, or rather bring him in for the first time? 101 appearances, 94 goals. That is a ridiculous record. Ridiculous. Haaland, Salah, Danny Welbeck have scored in the first 2 game weeks so far. Will they continue this run? Arsenal defense looks good. Man City look like they've just picked up where they left off. They have so many players missing, but the performance on the pitch isn't suffering. And now they have Gundogan, whose last appearance before this weekend was when he lifted the Champions League trophy for them. As you progress and you look at the teams and how they're performing, how does this impact your selections in your fantasy team? As we look towards the next game week, I will try to incorporate what I think of how the league looks so far. Okay, so game week 3, Arsenal versus Brighton. The last victory over Aston Villa was very impressive because it was more of a psychological victory and a statement to the rest that they are coming for everyone. Now we have Brighton and Arsenal, 2 undefeated sides taking the pitch against each other. In their last 5 encounters, Arsenal have won 3 and Brighton have won 2. And the most recent victories for Arsenal have come in the last 2 encounters in the league. This goes to show that they are the slight favourites, or rather I guess maybe heavy favourites. However, I do feel like this is a different Brighton. I feel like they're more alive, they have more available players, and they should pose a threat to them. We just heard that Welbeck likes to score against his former club. Maybe he should also try to score against Arsenal. I say this because if you're looking into Brighton players, right now you know he has scored in the last 2 games, so he should be your first pick. Mitoma has had a goal and an assist in the last 2 games. After that, you can sort of look at João Pedro and maybe that's about it. You can get Minte, but who's getting 4 players? But that's the order in which I would recommend them. If you're getting Arsenal players, right now, it seems like Saka, of course. Then you have defense, because I can't recommend Partey. That's a joke. But Trossard scored the last time out against his former club, and he would love to score against them again. So Saka, Trossard, Havertz scored the last time they played each other. And the defenders, whoever you have been choosing, be it Raya, Saliba, Gabriel, Ben White, carry on. For those of you who still don't have a keeper, I would suggest having Raya as your primary keeper. I am completely sold on him after the Villa performance. After this game, Arsenal will have a bit of a tough run in that they have Spurs and Man City. The Man City game will be a tough one. And then they have Leicester, Southampton and Bournemouth. So it'll be a steep climb and then easy descent. After facing Arsenal, Brighton will play Ipswich before taking on Forest, Chelsea, Spurs and Newcastle. So I will be looking to get into their players for at least 2 game weeks after the Arsenal game, and then get out after the Forest game. Because seeing how Chelsea just played, that will be an interesting game. And Spurs are also interesting, and Newcastle are tough as well. Actually, the next 10 game weeks are a bit difficult, so you'd really have to believe in them to stick with their players after the next 3 games. Brentford versus Southampton. Last time out, both of these teams lost. Brentford had yet to settle the whole Tony situation, and with such things, the sooner the better, so that they can use that cash to reinforce the squad to meet their goals. They were beaten 2-0 by Liverpool. They were not bad, but they played a better team and they lost. The real problem with Brentford is that they're like the opposite of Brighton, in that they make many signings, but these signings don't seem to be good. Like, when you look at Brighton, you have the Caicedos who come and then they just go. You have the Bissouma who comes and he goes. Brentford sign players, but they don't seem to perform. And I'm hoping that this situation doesn't last too long for them, so we can have players to rely on from their side. They signed Igor Thiago, but he already got injured. I don't know. They are a tricky side. Last year they were flirting with relegation. If they don't click this year, in this tougher season, it could be... they could find themselves fighting over there. Southampton are a newly promoted side, like you know. They have been impressive in that they keep a lot of possession. Of course, the Newcastle game, the red card had something to do with it. But they were still dominant in terms of possession in the Forest game. They lost 1-0, and the thing about them, it's like they also have this philosophy that they're trying to do, but they do not have finishers. Their problem is on the other end. It seems like they're going to struggle to score. And if they cannot figure that out and they can't really defend well enough, I mean, they've only lost 1-0, so it's not like they're being hammered. But there's just something worrying about them. It's almost like they play knowing that they can't win. I'm not sure if that makes sense. So in this matchup, it presents them an opportunity to beat a side that has just lost. And that's the same opportunity for Brentford. Now, if you're looking at Brentford players, you have Yohan Wissa, you have Mbumo. Those should be your 2. From Southampton, you have Brereton Diaz, Armstrong, and possibly Ariba. When they start to score, it will be clearer. But for now, I don't know. It's a kind of team where the defensive midfielder or a defender will score. Brentford haven't kept a clean sheet in their last 8 matches, while Southampton haven't scored yet in the Premier League this season. So that's going to be an interesting match. Brentford have a tough run of fixtures. After this, they have City, Spurs, West Ham, Wolves, and Man United. So if you're looking to get into them right now, I would highly advise against it. Unless something tells you that they're going to hammer this team. Southampton have relatively easier fixtures. They have Man U, Ipswich, Bournemouth, Arsenal, and then Leicester. So they're not easy by any chance, but they're easier than Brentford's fixtures. Everton versus Bournemouth. Their head-to-head shows that Everton have won the 2 games at home and lost the 3 games away. Now, the last time out, I made an error. I thought Everton were at home against Spurs, where they have a better record. But I was wrong. They were away, where they have a poor record. Now, in this game, they are home. And in this game, they tend to do better. They have had a tough start to the season. I don't even know where they go from here. They were very poor against Spurs. I guess it's a kind of situation where you're just happy you don't play Spurs every week. They are yet to score in the Premier League. They have conceded 7 goals, so their defense is not good at home or away. And I'm wondering now if Sean Dyche will be the first manager to be sacked, because they have looked bad in both matches. Actually, they look worse than Ipswich and Southampton and Leicester. I honestly wouldn't recommend you getting into this fixture. But if you have to, and you want an Everton player, Doucouré is your best bet, followed by McNeil and Harrison. Right now, they still have Branthwaite out, and maybe his return when he does come back, maybe that will shore up something. But for now, I'd be betting on them to concede. On the other end, Bournemouth were very unlucky not to win the game against Newcastle. That handball was meh. I thought it was shoulder. I don't know if you've seen it, but just check it and tell me what you think. I think they were robbed of a goal and a victory. And I thought Joe Linton should have been sent off. Now that that's out of the way, Semenyo has been incredible so far. He was just too strong for anybody on that Newcastle side. And now he's playing against Everton, which is a weaker defense. I believe that he will be somebody worth getting your hands into. Evan Nilsson looked impressive on his debut. He could have had 2 goals, but I think he was a bit shy on his debut. So I would say him, Evan Nilsson, and of course their defenders. This is a game where you could get their defenders. And Tavernier. After this fixture, Bournemouth will have Chelsea, Liverpool, which are tough games, and then Southampton, Leicester, and then Arsenal. So 3 of the next 5 games are actually difficult. So I wouldn't encourage you to get into them over the next 5 weeks, but just watch Semenyo. I would say if you have to get one, just get Semenyo. Everton have Villa next, followed by Leicester, Crystal Palace, Newcastle, and Ipswich. At this point, I don't think there's such a thing as an easy fixture for Everton. So wait for them to pick up some sort of form before getting into them. Ipswich versus Fulham. Ipswich were hammered last time out by Manchester City. Haaland had a hat-trick. They made mistakes. They, for me, just look like Burnley 2.0. A manager who is believing in his football. Okay, now, to be fair to them, they had Liverpool and City as their first 2 fixtures. Those are tough for absolutely any side in the Premier League, let alone promoted sides. So maybe we can cut them some slack and be a little bit patient with them, and they can say, okay, let's now play against smaller/easier competition and see whether our football really holds up or it doesn't, and then maybe make some adjustments. So I expect him to continue doing the same thing. If Fulham just keep pressing them, they will still make the mistakes, and maybe they will learn. Smodic, I'm not sure how to say that, and I've probably butchered it, is the first player I would recommend from Ipswich. Probably the only player I don't see why people would get to. From Fulham, Emil Smith-Rowe looks really good. Iwobi looks good as well. Pereira looks good. Muniz, not yet. Anthony Robinson looks good. They've just signed Anderson. And so maybe they're going to be much more closed at the back. Maybe investing in Fulham defenders will be something that reaps rewards. I mean, it did last season in the form of Robinson and Castagna and, of course, Leno. Maybe Anderson will just make it tougher. I'm really looking forward to see how they handle the speed and strength of Adama Traore. Davis really struggled in these two games. If he gave a penalty away, I'm pretty sure a penalty will be likely. Well, not pretty sure, but it's on the cards. I expect this game to have goals. After Ipswich, Fulham have West Ham, Newcastle, Forest, and then City. These are all winnable games. I'm not going to call them easy games, but they are winnable games for them. After Fulham, Ipswich play Brighton, Southampton, Villa, West Ham, Everton. With Ipswich, I'm not sure if an easy game exists yet, so it's just to wait and see. Leicester versus Aston Villa. The head-to-head for me doesn't really make sense, so I'm not even really going to talk about it because that was a different Leicester, that was a different Villa. And so I think it's all new now. Last time out, Leicester were beaten 2-1 by Fulham. They were competitive, and I expect them to continue to be competitive. They have shown they can score, kind of like how Luton could score. So I expect them to give them a fight. I was very lucky. Last time Fire scored, and he was the last defender on the bench, and he gave me 7 points. Unfortunately, it's looking like he will be leaving, and so I'm not going to advise you people to bring him into your teams just in case he goes. I would say their strongest players are Buonanotte, who takes the set pieces, Fatawu, Dikudoverid, and Vardy, in no particular order. Villa were not clinical last time out against Arsenal, and they easily could have scored a minimum of 2 goals. Now, Leicester will be hoping that that is the Aston Villa that shows up. If you're getting Aston Villa players, Watkins is still their best player. Then after that, you have Bailey. I really like Rodgers. Even in the Arsenal game, the way he was running at them and creating chances, I think against an easier defense on paper, he will be more lethal. I believe in that 5-point-something range, him and Emil Smith-Rowe are the best players. Matty Cash got injured, and their substitute is a man whose name is a bit difficult for me to pronounce for now. It is Nedeljkovic. He's 4.0. So he might be somebody worth looking into for the future, especially if Matty Cash's injury is serious. After Villa, Leicester have Palace, Everton, Arsenal, Bournemouth, and Southampton. So apart from the Arsenal fixture, if you can figure out who your Leicester player is, they might be worth taking a gamble on. As for Villa, their next 5 fixtures are sweet, especially if you get the right Villa players. They have Everton, Wolves, Ipswich, Man United, and Fulham. These are all winnable games for them. Nottingham Forest versus Wolves. In their last 5 fixtures, there have been 1, 2, 3, 4 draws. So that tells me that this game is evenly contested. However, I believe Wolves are much weaker than they were last season. And in my mind, even though the record says that they draw, I believe Wolves are slight underdogs in this matchup. I believe that Nottingham Forest will give them a good run for their money. Forest have been struggling to score, and so once they kind of figure that part out, I think they'll have it through. Now, Morgan Gibbs-White is their talisman. He is the player everyone should be looking at as your number 1 player from that team, followed by Wood. Wood is hit and miss, but when he gets going, hat-trick. Now you have Elanga and Hudson-Odoi. You can choose one of them. And those are the players. Ola Aina got 9 points last week. So if this is the kind of game you think they can keep a clean sheet, do it. However, with Strand Larsen and Cunha on the other side, I would strongly advise against getting into the defense of Forest. Wolves were absolutely battered by Chelsea last time out. They embarrassed themselves, especially at the heart of midfield. They were absolutely poor. Now, Mosquera was also poor. They are not defensively good. They look like they will be able to score, but it doesn't look like they'll be able to close up shop at the back. They really need to replace Kilman with somebody better than Mosquera. I'm honestly worried for them. Now, also to be a little bit fair to them, they have a bit of a tough opening, relatively speaking. So it may not be good to judge them, but they still should be much better than this defensively. So apart from Cunha and Larsen, I would say Ait Nouri and the Korean guy. That's it. After Wolves, Forest have Liverpool, Brighton, Fulham, Chelsea, Crystal Palace. These are not friendly games for them. They're not exactly winnable. I'll be more surprised if they win 2 out of the 5. I think if they draw 2 out of the 5, I think that's a good return. Basically, I'm not hopeful for them. But also, for Wolves, I'm not much more positive for them. Listen, they started the season with Arsenal. Then they have Chelsea. Then they have a break with Nottingham Forest. Then they have Newcastle, Villa, Liverpool. No, just don't jump into those fixtures. Just, I think, wait for like a few more weeks, and then they can have a breather, and then maybe they will be able to be much more competitive with people at their level. Right now, they're playing the top tier teams, and they can't compete. West Ham versus City. Both of these teams are coming off W's. City hammered Ipswich 4-1. West Ham beat... Who did they beat again? Palace. Yes. West Ham beat Palace 2-0. Wan-Bissaka came on and looked really good. They will probably need to start with him because he needs to just tackle all of those Man City wingers. As you can imagine, City are overwhelming favourites for this encounter. In the last 5 encounters, they have beaten them 4 times and have drawn once. In the 5 games that have been played, City have scored 2 goals twice and 3 goals in the last 3 games they've played each other. The most common score is 3-1. If you are getting into Manchester City, I would encourage you to get Haaland, of course, Savio, De Bruyne, and maybe Doku. Kudus scored a really great goal against City last time at the end of the season, if you remember that sort of bicycle kick. So he's the first person on my mind when I think of somebody favoured to score against City. So I'm just going to say Kudus, Bowen, Paqueta. I'll be honestly surprised if West Ham are able to do anything but lose. After the City game, West Ham have Fulham, Chelsea, Brentford, Ipswich and Spurs. So it's not exactly an easy run, but of course after City, the games will look easier for them. City, on the other hand, will have Brentford, Arsenal, Newcastle, Fulham and Wolves. Arsenal and Newcastle will be tricky fixtures, especially the Arsenal one. They have been quite tight, with Arsenal refusing to play football against them. So that one would likely be a draw or 1-0 somehow. To which side? Who knows? City have scored 13 goals in their last 5 matches, so they are on good goal scoring form. West Ham have scored 7 in the last 5 matches, so we'll see. Chelsea take on Crystal Palace. Chelsea were absolutely incredible against Wolves. This is arguably the best performance of the season of any team so far. 6-2. Palmer was impressive. Madueke was just on another level. He went on to say that he's fire and Palmer is ice and they mix well together. To be honest, it looks like a partnership that could flourish. I will be getting either Palmer or Madueke. Now, I am assuming that he will not rotate somebody who has just scored a hat-trick. So, if you're an Nkunku guy, I don't know. I think I would wait to see if he would play him on the left, where Mudryk was, because Mudryk underperformed, and see if he will try to play Palmer, then Madueke on the right, Nkunku on the left, and Jackson at the top. That might be the only thing that saves Nkunku people. I wouldn't blame you for getting off him, but I would really use this weekend as the last chance. Now, the guy I feel bad for the most in this whole situation is a Chelsea player by the name of Raheem Sterling. Imagine you put up that whole thing, which then eventually sort of makes you persona non grata, and now you're trying to convince people that they will miss you, but they won 6-2 without you, and now you're just forgotten. You're like Joao Cancelo on the Man City team. Life comes at you fast, huh? If you're getting a Chelsea player for your team, don't get Sterling, but get Palmer, and then you have Madueke and Jackson. Those are the only three that I am quite confident will play. Caicedo got injured, so I'm sure that will mean maybe Enzo Fernandez will be put lower, and it will create space for somebody else to play. But who? Your guess is as good as mine. On the Palace front, last time out, they were beaten. Eze was unlucky again. He's going to come good. It's just a matter of when. I think he needs help. I hope they get him somebody who is as dynamic as he is. Maybe they should get Sterling. That would be amazing. They have been selling players, and I hope they replace them. If you're getting Palace players, I would suggest Eze, Mateta, and Munoz. In their last 5 encounters, Chelsea, even though they have been trash, have beaten them all 5 times. So given that they're actually a little bit better now, Chelsea and Palace aren't exactly good at keeping clean sheets. Fun fact, Chelsea haven't lost to Crystal Palace in their last 14 encounters. They've won all 14 encounters. So it seems like easy money, but let's see. After Palace, Chelsea will have Bournemouth, West Ham, Brighton and Forest. These are all winnable games. After Chelsea, Palace have Leicester, United, Everton, Liverpool and Forest. Those are mostly winnable games. Newcastle versus Spurs. Just listen to these scorelines. Most recently in April, Newcastle beat Tottenham 4-0. Before that, Tottenham beat Newcastle 4-1. Before that, Newcastle beat them 6-1. Before that, Spurs were beaten 2-1. And then before that, Tottenham beat them 5-1. So this matchup tends to favor the home team. Newcastle are home, so this is timely. Newcastle were not great last time out against Bournemouth. Bournemouth were robbed. They should have lost 2-1. Joelinton was lucky not to have been sent off. So a lot of things went their way. And they'll be hoping that since they're home, Isak and Gordon tend to play better at home, even though Gordon did score in the last fixture. They will be hoping that they can get things going so that they're expected to challenge this year. So they should put their things in a row so that they can be better. They're not good. They're like Man U. Last time they met, Isak scored 2, Gordon had 1 and Shar had 1. That was when Newcastle were home. They're home again, so Isak captain? Tottenham were good last time out. They hammered Everton and will be looking to continue that good form. Solanke will probably still be out. Son should be up top. This could be a game where he performs as well. You have him, Maddison, and you can gamble with Romero or Pedro Porro. Newcastle are unbeaten in 12 games at home. So just because of the way I've read the records out to you, I am more likely to believe that this game will favor Newcastle. And to that extent, just like I said, Isak, Gordon, and maybe Harvey Barnes. Those would be the 3 choices I would give you from this team. Newcastle have Wolves, City, Fulham, Everton, and Brighton as their next 5 fixtures. So it's a mixed bag, but mostly favourable for Newcastle outside the City match. For Spurs, they have Arsenal next, then they have Brentford, Manchester United, Brighton, and West Ham. So they're entering a bit of a tough patch of fixtures for them as well. So moving forward, it'll be very important to choose your Spurs asset very well in order to navigate their next few fixtures. It might mean getting off the defenders or maybe finding out who their best player is for this period. And finally, we have the biggest match of the weekend, the marquee match, so to speak. Manchester United against Liverpool. The last time they played was the FA Cup, but let's just look at the Premier League. In the Premier League, in their last 5 encounters, Liverpool have won 3, drawn 1, lost 1. Of course, as everybody knows, Liverpool, since Klopp took over, have been the better team. They have a new manager and he seems to be picking up where the previous manager left off. They're still a good team. Man U are a team in transition and they seem to be making progress. slowly but surely. I am not convinced by Manchester United yet in this season. They seem to have better pieces, and if they stay fit, they could be a better team than they were last season. However, the first 2 games of the season have been unconvincing. Man U lost last time out to Brighton. Maybe they were a bit unlucky, but I can't really say they fully deserve to win the game. Liverpool beat Brentford comfortably. Luis Diaz was great. Salah did his thing. And I am of the belief that this will either be a victory for Liverpool or a draw. The best that Man U will be able to get in this game is a draw. If you're looking into Liverpool players, Salah, Diaz, Jota, those should be your top 3 picks. And then maybe Trent. On the other end, you have Bruno Fernandes still. Rashford tends to show up in big matches. And you could say Amad Diallo. And this is the kind of game where you could see Casemiro scoring. Or maybe the forgotten man, Anthony. No, I'm joking. But really, it's really Fernandes, Rashford, Amad right now. And probably Garnacho. But he seems to have lost his starting berth. So maybe not him. Liverpool tend to win big when this game is at home, but they're playing away from home, so the score should be smaller, maybe 2-0, 1-0, 2-1. I really think that Liverpool will come out on top in this fixture. Of course, I could be wrong, but that's where I'm leaning towards. The real trick with Liverpool right now is deciding who you want. For example, I have opted out of Salah. In return, I decided to gamble on Diaz. A lot of people who have opted out on Salah have gambled on Jota instead. And now we're all each hoping that our Jotas perform better than Salah. So far, so good. It's been comparable returns. After Liverpool, Manchester United have Southampton, Crystal Palace, Spurs, Villa, and Brentford. Those are mostly winnable games. Liverpool, on the other hand, have Forest, Bournemouth, Wolves, Palace, and Chelsea. So it sort of ramps up in difficulty, but these are still winnable games and they should be favourite to win at least 4 of the 5. When it comes to choosing a captain, the logic was quite simple. Bet against the promoted side. And so most of us went for Haaland. It is still wise to stick with Haaland. Outside him, I wouldn't argue with you if you decided to go for Salah. Definitely Palmer would be a great shout out, especially given his hat-trick of assists and goal. I wouldn't be surprised if some gambler took their chance on Madueke. Newcastle Spurs, Isak performed well against them last time out at home, so he would be a sleeper captain. The right Aston Villa vs Leicester could be good. I wouldn't be surprised with an Emil Smith-Rowe against Ipswich. Johan Wissa Ombomo vs Southampton could be interesting. Arsenal-Brighton game, that's a tough one. But I guess Saka, Welbeck, Mitoma would be possible from that matchup. And those are the obvious captain choices to me. So, if you haven't made your team now, if you haven't been so trigger happy, I would encourage you to hold off in making your changes because there is the European qualifications that are still happening. Chelsea play Servette, and there are cup games this week as well. So make your team on Thursday/Friday. Okay. And that's all from me. Have a great week. Bye bye.